So we can begin, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, you're not audible.
Okay. Am I audible now?
Yes, Prabhuji, perfect.
Oh, thank you. So, thank you very much for joining today. And I know it's Diwali and it's a busy time for everyone. So I'm grateful that you spared the time to be here. And Diwali, one of the festivals associated with this is the Deepavali. There are many festivals. It's the lamps that are lit to welcome Lord Ram and Sita and Lakshman when they come back from the forest. And we know, most of us broadly know the story of how Lord Ram was exiled and then Sita was abducted and then Ram defeated Ravan and then they came back. So that's a magnificent story as far as stories go. But I would focus on one aspect over here of how Sita was herself very resourceful throughout the war. And at one level, these stories can be seen as something that happened thousands of years ago. And we may say, how exactly is it relevant to me? It's good entertainment. Maybe it's a religious lore. No, actually, in terms of the principle that we make choices and we have consequences for the choices. That is a universal principle that is dramatically illustrated through the epics. And we can learn from the choices the characters make in the epics, like the Ramayana, that how our choices can be made more wisely. Broadly, we can say that if we look at our own behavior, sometimes we are wise and sometimes we are otherwise. Sometimes we look back and say, why in the wide world did I do that? What was I thinking? So what happens is we sometimes make unhealthy choices. And one such unhealthy choice is to become resentful. When things go wrong, it's understandable that we'll feel bad. But that feeling bad can grow or degenerate toward being resentful. So I'll discuss today's talk in broadly 3 terms. We'll be focusing on the character of Sita and how she dealt with the adversities that came in her life. So 3 points I'll discuss. First is why being resentful is understandable, but undesirable. And when we are facing difficulties, the opposite of being resentful is being resourceful. And we may say, what can I do? I'm in such a terrible situation. No, but being resourceful is not as difficult as it seems. We'll look at that. And the last part will be, okay, I appreciate that I shouldn't be resentful. I should become resourceful. How can I go about doing that? So we'll keep the character of Sita in mind and look at these 3 aspects. So resentful broadly means gruna, khunnas, basically feeling negative. Why is this happening to me? So let's look at this. When do we feel resentful? See, broadly, there are two reasons. Something which is very desirable for us, and that is stripped away from us. But on the other hand, the undesirable is imposed on us. So I wanted to eat a particular kind of food, and that food was cooked, but somebody else took it away. And the very food that I don't like, that's all that I have to eat today. I feel annoyed, I feel angry, I feel resentful about it. That's when we feel resentful. Now, what are the things which may cause resentfulness in us? One is nature's antipathy. That means just sometimes things just don't work. Now, maybe we wanted to travel somewhere, and because of the weather, the flight gets cancelled, and then we are stuck. Neither at home nor at the place where we wanted to be, just at the airport waiting, or in the railway station waiting. It's miserable. So sometimes nature's antipathy. Now, okay, if nature does something which we can't control, that's okay. We become resentful. It's difficult to deal with. But what makes resentment even worse is when somebody else does something which they did to hurt us, people's cruelty. Why did this person do like this? How does this person act like this? When now people may be cruel intentionally, or sometimes they may just be unintentionally doing like that. When somebody goes out of their way to hurt us, then that time the resentfulness becomes even more. This time the resentfulness can go towards revengefulness. So generally we can't take revenge against nature. If it rains on our parade, as they say, we can't spit at nature. The spit will just come back on our face. So resentment towards nature, we all understand, is useless. But when people, it's very easy to go towards being vengeful. You did this to me, I will get back at you. And that consumes us. But possibly the most debilitating, most dangerous resentment can come when bad situations come upon us because of our own mistakes. I've used a strong word over here, stupidity. How could I have been so foolish? How could I have trusted this person? How could I not check this? How did this happen? Why did I do like that? In one sense, we all want to learn from our experiences, but we may become resentful of ourselves and we may start beating ourselves up. And this constant beating ourselves up can lead to depression. It can lead to self-loathing. Many people just dislike who they are. Not only dislike, they hate who they are. And this is a very toxic emotion. And eventually, this can even lead to suicidal thoughts and actual suicide. So resentment is not just one among many emotions. It can be a very lethal and even fatal emotion. That's why dealing with it is extremely important. Now, if we consider one particular incident when Sita could have become very easily resentful. So that was when she was abducted. So when she was abducted, what all happened? So we could say that at one level, was nature to blame? Was people to blame? Was she to blame? We could look at all of that. At one level, it was nature in the sense that they were in the forest, they were away from their kingdom. But it is also true that Ravana was malevolent. Ravana had made a whole scheme by which Sita's protectors would be allured away or led away. So it is Sita's abduction. If we know how it happened, see, after one things went wrong. So let's begin from the right bottom. So we will see that what happened was, at one level, this beautiful deer came and started playing. And Sita said to Ram, can you get the deer for me? I would like to have him as a pet. And now they're supposed to be 14 years in exile. 13 years had ended already. Only 1 year was remaining. And Sita said, no, when we go back, I'll give this deer. This is so beautiful. I'll give this as a memento of our forest stay to your mother, to Kaushalya. And Ram just couldn't say no to her. He said, she has sacrificed so much for me. She's come with me to the forest. Now Lakshmana was a little suspicious. Hey, this deer doesn't look like normal. A deer is a harmless creature and other creatures play around a deer. But around this deer, all other creatures are just running away from it. I think it's a demon disguised as a deer. So Sita said, oh, Lakshman, you are just too suspicious. So what happened was, You could say that. So she told Ram to go. And then the deer ran away, and Lord Ram ran after it, and he kept running. And then eventually when Lord Ram decided to shoot an arrow at the deer, what happened? It changed. And he changed his voice. He started speaking in human-like voice, exactly like Ram's voice. Hey Sita, hey Lakshman. He called out for help. And Sita said, oh, Ram is in danger. Please go and help him. Lakshman said, Ram cannot be in danger. He has fought and killed great demons. This is just a trick. He says, no, it's not a trick. Please go. He says, no. Ram told me to stay by your side and protect you. He says, Sita was so frantic with anxiety for Ram that she spoke very unwholesome words, unbearable words for Lakshman. He says, you have an evil eye on me. That's why you want Ram to die, and then you can have your way with me. Lakshman had never even entertained a flicker of a thought like that. These words were unbearable. He says, oh Sita, you do not know what you're speaking. But I can't bear what you're saying. Therefore, I'll go. I know that my departure will bring disaster. I pray that you will be protected. And he drew Lakshman Rekha around Sita, a protective circle. Told her, please don't come out of here. That way you'll be protected. So she sent Lakshman away, and Lakshman went away. And then what happened was Ravan came in the garb of a sage. She says, please, Bhiksham Dehi, please give me some alms. And Sita said, please wait for a few minutes. My husband will come back, and then we will serve you. He says, no, I'm very hungry. Please do something to me right now. And he seemed to almost get angry. So Sita thought, I don't want to offend a sage. If you offend him, he may curse me, he may curse my family. I don't want that. So she stepped out of the Lakshman Rekha, and immediately Ravan revealed his form and abducted her and took her away. So here, when Sita was being abducted like this, she called out, please help. And there was Jatayu over there. Jatayu was an old vulture who was like a father figure. He was a friend of Dashrath Maharaj, who was the father of Ram. And he had said, Rudradipasam Sevita Rama, that he had said that when they came to Dandakavan, Nakan and Rama, when they came to Dandakavan, he said, I will protect Sita over here. When he saw Ravan abducting Sita, he came and chided Ravan initially. When he challenged him, then he attacked him, and Jatayu fought heroically. But unfortunately, Jatayu was old and Ravan was wily. So eventually Jatayu lopped off Ravan. So although Jatayu injured Ravan many times, but Ravan was young, and he just eventually lopped off the wings of Jatayu, and Jatayu fell down helpless as he watched Sita being abducted. So now, why did Sita's abduction happen? So Sita could have blamed herself. Why was I so attracted by the deer? Why did I send Lakshman away? Why did I step out of the Lakshman Rekha? You see, none of these was she selfishly motivated. That she wanted the deer not only for herself, but for her mother-in-law. She wanted Lakshman to go not just for herself, but for the protection of Ram. She came out to serve the so-called sage, not just because she wanted to gain pious credits, but she wanted to protect her family from the sage's curse. So her motives were not bad, but still she could have beaten herself up. Why did I do that? Why did I do that? And she could have blamed. Or she could have blamed, okay, I got angry, but why did Lakshman go away like that? I desired a deer. Why did Ram have to go away like that? Leave me with Lakshman and then leave me alone. She could have blamed Jatayu. Why couldn't Jatayu protect me? She could have blamed Ravan. Now we could say that this whole set of events went wrong. And sometimes when things go wrong, see, the why question is not very helpful. Why did this happen? Sometimes it's helpful in trying to find out a particular way in which we can prevent it from happening in future. But sometimes when things go wrong, there are multiple things that go wrong. And asking the why question may sometimes just trap us in the past and may not help us move forward. So let's look at what Sita did. So she could have resented Ravan, she could have resented her protectors, she could have resented Kaikai, because of her machinations. We are loyalty, we were sent to live in the forest, and that's how we got kidnapped. She could have resented herself. But throughout it all, although Sita was devastated, she was horrified. to be abducted, but she still maintained her presence of mind. Let's see how she maintained her presence of mind. So resentment, what it does, it just completely blinds us and blackens our future. Because, oh, why did this go wrong? This is so terrible. We can't see anything. Let's see how she didn't resent. So what is the difference between resentfulness and resourcefulness, which we all have to choose? So when we are resentful, we close our eyes when everything around us starts becoming dark. And why did this happen? Why did this happen? Why did this happen? And then, yes, a terrible thing may have happened. And sometimes not just one, many terrible things may happen at the same time. And it's become very dark. But if we close our eyes, then even if there is some light somewhere, we won't be able to see it. So to some extent, when things start going dark around us, we can't control it. When it starts becoming night, we can't control it. When suddenly the power supply goes off, we can't control it. But imagine if the power supply goes on and we close our eyes. That's simply making things worse. We will never do that physically. We'll try to see as much as we can, at least look for some flashlight, reach out for it. But unfortunately, at a psychological level, that's what we do. We close our eyes, and that makes things worse. On the other hand, when we are resourceful, what happens is, yes, things have gone dark, but let me see whatever I can in this darkness. We open our eyes wider and look for some light somewhere. So that is being resourceful. So resentfulness, what it does is, we are constricted externally. We are put in a situation where very little is in our control. But then we shrink internally. We stop even trying to do anything to fix the situation. But when we are resourceful, we grow internally. Okay, what can I do in this situation? What can I do? So let's look at what Sita did. So now at one level, if we consider resentment is always justifiable, but it is never justified. What does it mean? It's always justifiable means right now, each one of us can probably list 10 to 15 things, if not 50 or 100 things, which have gone wrong in our life and which we feel are unfair. Why is this person behaving like this? Why did this happen? Why did this? So we can justify resentment, but it's never justified. It is not a healthy response. Yeah, things have become dark around us, but don't close your eyes. That will only make things worse. So now what can we do? So I discuss being resentful is understandable. We don't want bad things to happen to us, but it's undesirable because we are blinding ourselves when the world is darkening around us. So now let's look at the second part with Sita's example again, how she was resourceful. It's not as difficult as it seems. So what happened was, when Jatayu tried to protect her, now Sita was also a Kshatrayani. She was a warrior's queen. And even when she was being abducted by Ravana, and she saw Jatayu nearby, she realized Jatayu would not be a match for Ravana. And she told Jatayu, please don't try to stop Ravana yourself. Don't fight against him. Just inform Ram that I have been abducted by Ravana. Now Jatayu, he felt that he had a duty to protect. He felt I cannot live with myself if I don't do something to protect Sita. So what happened was, he was defeated. He did try to protect Sita, and he was defeated. But when his wings were lopped off, what happened was, he realized that I'm going to be defeated. The first wing was lopped off. And actually, when Ravan tried to kill him, Ravan tried to attack him in the chest and just pierce his body apart, Jatayu dodged the second blow. So that his wing was pierced and he fell down. He didn't let his body be cut into two completely, because he realized, okay, if I can't save Sita, at least I can serve her by giving her message. And because his core body was not cut, that's how he survived. And he maintained his life till Ram came in search for Sita. And then he informed Ram that Sita has been abducted by Ravan, and they went in the southern direction. So in this way, Sita's resourcefulness led to Jatayu's resourcefulness. And at least for Sita, she was not abducted she didn't just disappear from the face of the earth with no knowledge of what happened. So even when nothing is in our control, there are always small things in our control. Now later on, as she was going further down, she was being taken through the sky by Ravan, and she was calling out for help. And then she realized that Ravan was going at such a speed from the sky, no one would be able to help her. And she realized she was just ruining her throat, wasting her energy. So she became silent. But she was still looking for some help somewhere. And then as they were streaking through the sky, she looked down and she saw some kind-faced monkeys looking up to see Ravan streaking. She was intermittently calling out, and those monkeys also noticed. She thought, let me do something. So she immediately, while Ravan was holding on to her, she immediately took out some of her jewels and she ripped a piece of her cloth off and tied the jewels, and she threw it down to them. And what happened? This was also a clue she was leaving for Ram. So later on, Lord Ram did come in search for her, and then he met Sugriv. And when Sugriv told, we have got the jewels. Oh, really? Please show me. And then Ram saw that, and he realized, oh, thank God Sita is at least alive. And Sita is, so her presence of mind was always there. So even in helpless situations, one doesn't have to be completely helpless. Then later on, when she was in Lanka, eventually after nearly the year had come to an end, and Hanuman came there. Not the year had come, several months had gone by. Hanuman came there, and Hanuman talked with her. Hanuman took her message. But then she heard that Hanuman had been arrested, and Hanuman's tail was being burned. And she prayed to Agnidev, please don't hurt Hanuman. If I have done any piety at all, please don't let your fire may burn, but let it not hurt Hanuman. And then what happened? Hanuman was ready to tolerate the pain for the service of Ram and Sita. He had girded himself. But suddenly he felt, hey, the heat, the pain has disappeared. And he looked back and he saw his tail was burning, but it was not hurting at all. And then he also realized, this must be Mother Sita's blessings. He thanked her. And then, so her resourcefulness was very small. She just prayed. She could have just lost her hope in despair. Oh, the one messenger who had come to take a message, that person has also been arrested. Now he'll be killed. What is going to happen? She would have lost hope. But what did Hanuman do? Her resourcefulness triggered Hanuman's resourcefulness. Hanuman saw this tail, which is burning but not hurting. This can become a perfect weapon. You remember Hanuman flew. Hanuman jumped across from India to Lanka. And he jumped across. Generally, when we go trekking high up, the lighter the baggage we have, the easier it is to go. So when Hanuman jumped across, he didn't have a single weapon with him. Even when he fought with the demons who came to attack him, he actually broke down trees and used their stumps, or he broke down a gate and used the bar of the gate to fight. So he had no weapons. But this burning but not hurting tail became his weapon, and he set Lanka on fire. So it's Hanuman's heroism, but it's also Sita's resourcefulness. So even in situations where there seems to be nothing in our control, there are small things in our control. And that's what Sita is consistently exhibiting over here. So Sita could have lost hope. This demon is so powerful. And they were in an island which was surrounded by water. Many times in the past, kings would have moats around their kingdom so that people couldn't come in through the waterways, because the moats would be filled with crocodiles and other dangerous creatures. But Ravan didn't just have a moat, he had a huge ocean around his kingdom, around his island. Sita could have lost hope, but she maintained hope. And this is one of the biggest dangers of resentment. Resentment kills hope. We need hope to be alive. We need the hope that tomorrow will be better than today. And more importantly, not just tomorrow will automatically be better than today, but we can play a part in making tomorrow better. We can play that part. So Sita, at one level, Sita, at one level, what was she doing? She was waiting, anticipating, hoping, praying that Ram will come. And whenever she had a little opportunity, she was doing what she could in her situation. So she played her part by saying no to Ravan's allurements, saying no to Ravan's threats. And in that way, she kept her hope strong. So we move forward. So without hope, we are just existing. We aren't living. We aren't alive. In fact, you could say that one of the biggest causes of depression is a complete loss of hope. So then it's a terrible state to be in. Sometimes it can be clinical depression where medication is required, but quite often it's just that we have let life's negativities, life's darkness close our eyes. We don't have to do that. Look for some small thing we can do and start doing it. I'll talk about that towards the end. But so now, if we want to, why resourcefulness is not as difficult? Because let's look at this. What does being resourceful mean? 3 aspects. When there is hope internally, then that brings some energy. I want to do something. And that energy leads to activity. So now where do we begin? We can begin from wherever possible. Wherever possible. Sometimes we just start with an activity. Do something to help someone. Do something for someone else. People say, I'm myself so miserable. What can I do for anyone else? No, just start. Can you do something? Maybe speak a kind word to someone and see a smile on their face. And that makes such a big difference. Okay, if I can't do anything, at least I can speak kind words. So that activity gives us hope. So we start wherever we can. We start with hope internally. We start with activity externally. We start with whatever energy we have and start doing something. Start doing something. There is increasing evidence that when people start taking care of someone outside themselves. In the West, there is something called equine therapy. Equine therapy means that when somebody is very depressed, tell them that just go to a stable and take care of a horse. You don't have to gallop on the horse and enjoy the horse. Just take care of the horse. Pat it, maybe clean it, offer some service. So, and they found that this is a very time-tested way of people to come out of the depression, because they start saying, I can make some difference even in a small creature's life. Now, devotees are actually connecting with this and developing this. In our tradition, there is Go Seva that can be called as bovine therapy. And I've talked with many people, and many devotees have told me, that from this, their friends, they feel agitated. Just they come and take care of the cow, do some service. What happens is when we start doing something outside of our own concerns, and even if we feel that I can do some small difference, I can do something constructive, the darkness around it starts dissipating. At least some rays of light start coming in. So we need to begin where we can. Sita could have lost hope, but she never lost hope. She kept doing whatever she wanted. So now, in one sense, Sita was imprisoned by Ravan. But actually, Ravan was in his own prison, and that was a worse prison. So Sita was physically imprisoned, but Ravana was psychologically imprisoned. Ravana was imprisoned by his lust. So because of that lust, what happened was, he was not free at all. Although many people gave him good advice, don't abduct Sita. When Ram came and gave a warning to return Sita, when Hanuman burnt half of Lanka, I just couldn't do it. So at one level, now, why am I giving the example of Ravan? Most of us won't think that we are like Ravan. And that is true that we may never do anything as demoniac as Ravan. But the craving is there inside us. And quite often we can have cravings for various things. And when those cravings are not fulfilled, we can also become resentful. So actually, in one sense, Ravan was more resentful than Sita. Ravan was resentful that here I have abducted this woman and she is in my captivity, but I am not able to touch her. I'm not able to enjoy her. And he would have sleepless nights because of that. So, if we don't let go of our cravings, then they will imprison us. They will imprison us in resentment. Look at the unfulfilled cravings. But Sita was free from that. She was physically imprisoned, but she was emotionally, spiritually free. Why? Because she was absorbed, even while in the prison, even when she was in, you could say, there is house arrest and there is, you could say, garden arrest or park arrest. Sita was in park arrest. She was kept in Ashok Vatika. She had told Ravan that Ravan had invited her to come to a palace. He had taken her to tour of her palace. And she said that when Ram was exiled, when my Lord Ram was exiled, I was also exiled. So for 14 years, I am not going to enter into any palace. So Ravan then let her stay in Ashok Vatika, which was his favorite garden. So Sita was physically imprisoned, but she was not actually imprisoned. She was not tormented. She was not as miserable as Ravan. Why? Because she could lovingly remember Lord Ram and find inner satisfaction in that remembrance. Even amid the separation, her memory was her treasury. Her memory was her treasury. And in that remembrance, she experienced relief, she experienced strength, she experienced solace. And she awaited the time when Lord Ram would return and rescue her. So she is an example of how not to be resentful. Because Ravan held on to the craving. So what happened? He would only lustfully remember Sita. And all that he got was inner dissatisfaction, inner torment. So sometimes we may feel that externally my situation is so terrible and that person's situation is so comfortable, so enjoyable. But who knows what things are tormenting them? Everybody is troubled in the world. Everybody has things which they don't like happening to them. And everybody has things which they like not happening to them. And that can make anyone resentful. In fact, the more successful a person becomes, the more reasons they can have for being resentful. Because what happens is when somebody is successful, then they start thinking that I should be able to control things. I should be able to, things should go according to my will. If somebody is not very successful or powerful, they understand, okay, this is, sometimes things don't work according to my plan. I just have to accept it and live on. But somebody is very successful, then actually they can very well become more resentful. And they may be more miserable than those people who are not that successful, not that powerful, not that wealthy. So that's why for us, rather than resenting, oh, why are so many good things happening to this person and why are so many good things, no good things happening to me? See, that what happens to us will not determine our happiness as much as what are we looking at? What are we focusing on? So if you're focusing on the things we don't have, the things that have gone wrong in our life, no matter how much we get, we will not be happy. And this is one of the biggest challenges in social media. We humans always have a comparative mentality, but social media has made comparison so easy. So you could say unavoidably in the face for all of us. That social media was supposed to bring connectivity, but there are so many surveys that, especially among, say, in the West and increasingly in India also, among teenage girls, social media engages in one of the biggest causes of depression. Why? Because somebody may take a photo of themselves and put on social media and they look how many likes I got and how many likes she got or how many likes that person got. And in the world, what is going to happen? No matter how good looking somebody is, there are always people who are more good looking than us. And that can cause so much depression, so much insecurity, so much unworthiness. So we have to be very careful that we learn to avoid resentment. Otherwise, no matter how much we have, we will end up miserable. So what happens is, when we are resentful, we start thinking, life is unfair to me, people are unfair to me, the world is unfair to me. And what is the use of doing anything at all? And then we start thinking, let me do nothing. When we are resentful, to some extent, we give up, we become goalless. And then in one sense, that is the easiest way to fail. Now when we say, what does it mean easy? Easiest way to fail is to not set any goals. Sita had that goal. I want Ram to come back and I will wait for him to come back. But if we don't set goals, what happens is we avoid the pain of small failures, because you may say, I tried this and this didn't work. I tried this and this didn't work. I tried that and that didn't work. What is the use of trying? Let me just give up. But then when we give up, we may avoid the pain of small failures. But our life itself ends up as a giant failure because we never tried anything at all. Sita could have said, I called out to Jatayu and he couldn't help. I threw those jewels to those monkeys and it didn't seem to help. Whatever I do is not helping at all. Fine, let me try. Ram is never going to find me. Let me just give myself to Ravan. She didn't do that. She held on. So being resourceful means setting some goals. Okay, what can I do in this situation? What can I do in this situation? What can I do in this situation? We see Srila Prabhupada is a prominent example of this. He could have had so many reasons to be resentful. Almost everything he tried, it just wasn't successful. It was a failure. It was Prabhupada tried to run a flourishing business so that he could support his Guru Maharaj Bhaktisiddhanta Thakur's mission. And he tried business at multiple places in Kolkata, in Mumbai, in Allahabad. Nowhere did it work. Then he tried to run the Back to Govardhan magazine, but there were no takers at that time for a magazine in English, especially philosophical magazine. People wanted Katha and in Hindi. Then Prabhupada tried to work with his god brothers, but they had a very parochial vision. They didn't want to expand. And they didn't let Prabhupada expand. Prabhupada tried to start the League of Devotees. And the very people who were his supporters became his opponents. And the place which was going to be his international headquarters, Prabhupada had to leave that and go away. And whatever Prabhupada tried, it just didn't seem to work. He finally got on the Jalduta to go to America, but then his own body let him down and he had got 2 terrible heart attacks. Then he somehow came to America, and the first person who seemed to be about to become his follower, that person took drugs, went high, and came to attack Prabhupada. And leave alone a person becoming his follower, Prabhupada had to be in fear. Is he following me to attack me? Prabhupada had to leave that place, and he was homeless in America. Prabhupada had 100 reasons to be resentful, but he was resourceful. Okay, how can I serve Krishna in this situation? This didn't work out. Let me try this. Let me try this. Let me try this. So Prabhupada always had that purposefulness. So if we are resentful, we become purposeless, and that is dangerous. It may be easy for us, but it is not easy on us. What does it mean? And okay, I don't have to do anything. I'll just be resentful. I'll have a pity party. Oh, life is so terrible. This person did this to me, that this to me. But eventually what is happening? We are wasting our life. It's not easy on us. At the end of our life, we will what did I do? Why did I waste my life in resentment like this? It's easy to choose to be resentful. But when you look back, it is difficult to live with resentment. It's difficult to live like that. And what Sita's example demonstrates is that even if there is nothing we can do, still there is something we can do. Even if there's nothing we can do externally, there is something we can do internally. And that is where Bhakti Yoga and Krishna consciousness are so empowering, because they show us so many ways in which we can internally connect with the indwelling divinity within us, can internally connect with the Lord. And just as Sita, she was in a completely imprisoned situation. Few of us will be in as terrible as a situation as she was in. But whatever be the troubles in our situation, we can cultivate inner remembrance of the Lord. And by cultivating that inner remembrance, we can experience inner freedom. Things might be dark around us, but we don't have to let that make things dark inside us. We can choose. We can choose to be resourceful. It's difficult, but it's worthwhile. It's fruitful. So Krishna talks about this. Yadagre chanu bandecha sukham mohanamatmana nidra alasya pramadotham tattamasamudhartam. 1839. So it's like poison from beginning to end. You'll see it's dark from everywhere. It's just, if we are resentful, we are neither happy in the beginning, nor in the middle, nor in the end. We just maybe we have some kind of perverse pleasure Oh, I can outsource the responsibility for all my problems to someone else, and I don't have to do anything about it. But then I stay miserable. On the other hand, being resourceful is, it is difficult to choose, but it makes life easier. It makes our conscience clear. We become free from the prison of our mind's negativity. When we blame people for our problems, what happens is, I'm not saying that people are not bad and sometimes they are responsible, but just focusing on that, obsessing on that, it just disempowers us. And when we choose to be resourceful, not resentful, what happens is we become free from the prison of the mind's negativity. So Krishna talks about this, that which tastes like poison in the beginning. Yattadagre vishamiva pariname amrutopamam tat sukham satvikam proktam atma buddhi prasadajam. That which is like poison in the beginning, but it is like nectar in the end. So you'll see this darkness over here. Yes, it's difficult to be resourceful. It's so easy to lie in bed. It's so easy to complain. It's so easy to blame. But what can I do in this situation? If we look at that, it's poison in the beginning, but it will be nectar in the end. We'll start seeing how things do improve, how things do become better. So this was the next part I discussed, that why being resourceful is not as difficult as it seems. That's the second part. And now let's move to the last part here. How do we shift from resentfulness to resourcefulness? So let's start from resentful to resourceful. What can we do about it? So broadly, I will say three things over here. Look for something good and be grateful. Do something good and be purposeful. And look at the Lord and be faithful. So these are basically related with, you can relate this again with 3 phases of time. If you consider, look at the past, find something to be grateful for. You say, my past has been terrible. Okay, your past has been terrible. Maybe it has been. But if the very fact that we are alive means that there are more things right than wrong that happened in our life. If it had been all completely dark, we would be dead today. So is there nothing to be grateful for in your life? Is there, maybe 100 things went wrong, but one thing went right? Maybe 10 people were cruel to us, but maybe one person was good to us, one person was kind to us. So be grateful for that one person, be grateful for something. So what happens is, when there's darkness all around, it is we who have to search for that light. So what happens is, when we can see that, yeah, there are some things good in my life that also happened, we can be grateful. And that creates hope. Hope is very important. So we can get hope by looking at our past. Okay, yeah, this thing did work out right. That thing did work out right. And if we look back at our lives, we will see that there are many things which did work out right. See, especially when we are depressed or when we are resentful, all that we can see is how things went wrong in our life. Oh, right now, these have gone wrong, but in the past also those things went wrong. In the past, those things went wrong, and those things went wrong. And well, yeah, it's true, but is that always true? Well, no, it's not always true. There are times when things have worked out wonderfully also. So look at the past and be grateful. Be grateful. I found this is such a powerful way to move ahead in our lives. That at one time I was traveling by flight, and I visited one country, the Caribbean, and this happened twice actually. Once in the Caribbean and once in America, in Chicago. When I travel, for me, I'm also a writer and a speaker, so my laptop is very important. So twice my laptop was stolen. And both times it was partially my carelessness, again, many factors involved, but somehow it was stolen. And then I felt so infuriated, first with myself, that I was a little careless, then at whoever was supposed to be there and take care of things, and that person didn't take care of those things. But then I started thinking that, okay, I look back at, okay, this is so terrible. How am I going to give my classes? How am I going to prepare? I said, okay, I look back at the past. I had so many opportunities to speak. There were times I look back and remembered I had a laptop, but it didn't work. And I remember 2, 3 talks which I gave without a laptop, without any notes, without any preparation. And by Krishna's mercy, I went well. So of course, a laptop not working and laptop getting stolen are two different things. But what happens is, instead of just thinking, nothing ever works, look back and look at the things that we can be grateful for. And there are things in our life to be grateful for. And then look at the present and be purposeful. Be purposeful. So that time, actually, when my laptop was stolen, it might seem like a small thing, but you could say, it's like if a warrior, for a policeman, if their gun is stolen, for a warrior, their weapon is stolen. So for me, it was like completely disempowering. But then I remember I just decided, okay, I had to give around 5, 6 classes, and I was supposed to prepare for them. But then I decided, okay, I don't have a laptop to prepare, so I'll just dictate into my phone. And I was waiting at the airport, so it was very noisy. But I just started dictating my thoughts, and suddenly all the resentment started going away. So I just started calmness and clarity coming in. So now it was not as helpful as typing things or processing things, but just start doing something small. Be purposeful. Be purposeful. And for the future, be faithful. Be faithful. So Prabhupada writes in a letter that no matter what happens to you, know that Krishna has a plan for you. So Krishna has a plan for you. So we look at the future and we can be faithful that the Lord has something happening. So be grateful, be purposeful, be faithful. So now what happens is, if we look at our own lives, I'll conclude with these 3 points, a little bit more elaboration about be grateful. How can we be grateful? No, this is an important difference. Even if we can't be grateful for all situations, we can be grateful in all situations. Yes, this situation is terrible. And if I look at the situation, I can't be grateful because it's such a horrible situation. But then instead of focusing on what is horrible about the situation, I can see, okay, what resources do I have to deal with the situation? What resources do I have to deal with the situation? And it's such a big shift, big positivity. So now I was with one like a remote farm community, and there were people live in a relatively secluded place. This was in the West, and there was a young Western couple who had come there. They had also started coming, and they were experimenting living over there, and they had a small child, and that child had just wandered off and it got lost. Now around the farm community there was like a forest, and everybody, when they came to know the child is lost, everybody became alarmed and everybody came running over there. The whole community came, the community leaders came. I was also there. I was just visiting, and they said, okay, we'll form a search squad and we'll go here, we'll go there. And the mother started crying. So I talked with that family earlier. They had attended several of my classes. So then I talked with her, and I was so amazed what she replied. It is understandable if a mother has lost her child, she'll be naturally in tears. She'll be beside herself with anxiety. She said that we'll find him. Don't worry. She says, I'm not worried. I'm grateful. He says, what? He said that throughout my life, I've lived such a lonely life. And she had a very difficult life. Her parents were separated and a lot of things in her life. She said that when my child is lost, there are so many people and I don't even know any of them. Almost the community had about 100, 120 people, and almost the entire community had come. So all of these people have come to help me. I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that if I lost my child, I'm lost it here, and there are so many supportive people. If I'd lost him somewhere else, if I'd lost him in the community where I was living, which was like a high crime locality, it would have been horrible. So I was amazed by her thought process. And instead of resenting that, oh, my child is lost, I think I'm grateful that there are so many people here to help. So we can't be grateful for all situations. She's not grateful that a child was lost, but she was grateful that she was in a community where there are so many people to help. So we can be grateful in all situations. So gratitude itself is one, we can say that if we are still alive, I said, look back at the past and find something good. If we are still alive, that's proof that there's more right than wrong with us, that the Lord is not done with us. The Lord has some purpose for our life. And that way we can be grateful and move forward. And now be purposeful. So quite often we need to look at the past and maybe see the past as a reference point for what we have in the present. And then we can be grateful. So, but with this purposeful, at the very least, what you can do is, if I can do nothing about it. So we may say that, okay, is there something terrible you can do right now? Yeah, when things have gone wrong, I can lash out at everyone. Okay, think about some terrible thing you can do and don't do it. That itself will give us some sense of control. Sometimes when we feel powerless, we need to get some sense that I'm not as powerless as it seems. So if you say I'm powerless, can I make things worse? Yeah, whatever situation we are in, we always have the power to make that situation worse. We may be in a terrible relationship and we say, whatever I am doing is not making things better. Okay, but can you make things worse? Of course. Just take off all verbal restraint for 15 minutes. A relationship which we have cultivated for 15 years can be destroyed in 15 minutes. So at some time when we feel like doing something terrible, don't do it. And that itself, okay, that much self-restraint I have, that much power do I have. So on the other hand, so we don't have to, we could complain and curse, but we don't do that. Think of something good you can do and then do it. One of my friends is in, he offers, not one, many of my friends are in chaplaincy and they offer spiritual care. We also have a hospital in Mumbai, in Bhaktivedanta Hospital, where they offer spiritual care. So one of my chaplain friends, he told me that when I meet people, it's almost like I can predict who is going to heal faster and who is going to heal slower, especially when people have diseases which are in one sense difficult to cure. Who's going to be relatively peaceful, who's going to have a very painful time. He says, how do you know that when people are admitted in the hospital, that if they are just basically courteous, they thank people for doing, they don't yell at the medical caregivers, they may not yell at the doctors, but at the nurses and the other staff, they think it's their right to lord over them. So if people are at least courteous and polite, that's a very good beginning, because what it indicates is that they are not letting their negativity of the sickness consume them completely. So this is a power which we always have, that no matter how bad situations are in, we can speak some kind words. And we should never underestimate the power of one kind word spoken at a particular time. It can make a huge difference in someone's life. So speak some kind words, be purposeful. So let our consciousness be like a river moving toward the ocean of service to the Lord. Whatever the situation we are in, let's see, how can I serve the Lord in this situation? So earlier I said, the why question. Why did this happen to me? Sometimes that's a very unhelpful question. But we change the question and ask, not why did this happen to me, but what can I do now? Oh Lord, how can I serve you now? Then what will happen is, we can be fixed in purpose. I want to make things better. But okay, how do I go about making things better? I don't know. I'm open to that. Maybe this will work, maybe this will work, maybe this will work. Let's see what works. So when a river is moving toward the ocean, a river doesn't necessarily be attached to one way. That way is blocked. The river will go left, will go right, go below, go above, or it may just keep hitting till it erodes that obstacle and goes by that. So we need fixed in purpose, flexible in path. That is being purposeful, yes. So that's what I give the example of Prabhupada. Prabhupada tried so many things. But Prabhupada, in a letter to one of his Indian supporters, he says that I'm experimenting many things. Let us see what works out and how Lord Chaitanya's prophecy can be fulfilled, how Krishna's message can be spread. So that's being purposeful. That's always, whatever situation we are in, how can I serve Krishna? And sometimes you think service attitude, like a very abstract thing. Where is Krishna? How can I serve? I just think, okay, service attitude you can translate in simple terms as, how can I help make things better? How can I help make things better? That is service attitude toward the Lord, translated into very universal terms. So beyond that, the last part is be faithful. Faithful is about the future. So at one level, faith means openness to possibility. That means sometimes faith means I'm convinced about this. Yes, that is true. That is one aspect of faith. But another aspect of faith is, okay, I don't know what the Lord's plan is. I don't know how that plan is going to work out, but I am open to possibility. So don't reduce God's conception. I prayed to God and He didn't help me. Okay. But did He really not help you? Maybe He's helping you in a different way from what you expected. That sometimes, I mean, when Sita, she was expecting and hoping Ram to come. But Hanuman came at that time. And now Sita didn't know Hanuman at all. And initially when she came, she saw this monkey, she was suspicious, and understandably so. She thought, is this Ravana who has come in a disguise now to lower my guard? Or is this some of Ravana's, some stew of Ravana? Who has taken on this guard? So she was suspicious. But when Hanuman started speaking Lord Ram's glories, and started telling pastimes of Ram, Lord Ram, which nobody except with intimate pastimes with Ram and Sita, which nobody knew. Oh, she like, this is actually Lord Ram's messenger. This is my Lord's messenger. So she was open. She didn't just dismiss, oh, I don't know this monkey. Who's the stranger? I won't listen to him. So sometimes the Lord may answer our prayers, but in a way completely different from what we expected. So we have to be open to possibility. Open to possibility. I was once in America and in a university, and one student, he came to me, I'm an atheist. He said, what happened? I said, I didn't address the issue. Okay, so, I asked, so what made you atheist? So generally when people say they're atheistic, they have philosophical reasons for the atheism. But beyond that, there are personal scars which made them atheistic. So I asked him, how did you become an atheist? What made you an atheist? Instead of saying atheism is terrible and this is wrong, no, I just addressed the issue. And he said, I grew in a place where my parents used to go to a church, and that church taught parents don't show any affection to your children, because if you show affection to your children, then you'll pamper them, you'll spoil them. You should be very strict in training them. That is the way you will maintain their purity. So parents never showed any affection. Then when I went to the Sunday school in the church, the teachers there were very harsh and sometimes abusive. And I said, I never want to be a part of this. And then when I was 8, both my parents died in an accident. And then I said, oh, okay. I was sorry to hear this. So he was in a prominent university. So he said, I prayed to God so much that when they were in the hospital, that they be saved, but neither of them survived. When I was being abused, people were being harsh to me in the church, I prayed to God. He didn't help me. So I stopped believing in God. And then I asked him, okay, how did, you are in a prominent university, is in a good, not Ivy League, but below Ivy League, a good college, and the prestige universities in America. So he says, how did you come here if you lost your parents? He said, I was first taken to an orphanage, but then I was adopted by a very good family. They don't believe in God, but they're good people. So I asked him, at what age you were adopted? He says, 11. Okay, so I said, what is the chance in general for kids of 11 to be actually adopted by foster parents? He says, it's extremely rare. So I said that, see, when bad things happen to you, you're saying, why didn't God answer my prayers? You are holding God responsible for that. But if you're being fair, then when something extraordinarily good happened to you, that you were adopted by a family, generally parents want to have young children, young babies especially, because they feel they can take care of the baby and they can shape the baby. Who knows what all teenagers have gone through, and teenagers have so many tantrums. So and normally people don't want to adopt teenagers. So when something good happened to you, isn't it fair that you see God's hand over there also? You see God's hands only in the bad things that happen to you, and you attribute the good thing that happened to you to luck. Is that fair? Oh, I never thought of it like that. So I'll have to think about it. So faith doesn't mean that always our prayers will be answered on our terms. God can reciprocate with us in many different ways. It's openness to possibility, how the Lord may reciprocate with us. So this is a key principle. Even if you forget everything else, you can remember this, that everything that happens may not be good, but God can bring good through everything that happens. Bad things happen in life, but through the bad things, the Lord Ram, Lord Krishna, they are the same one Supreme Lord. They are expert enough to bring good through everything that happens. But for them to bring good, it's not automatic. It's we have to choose. And our choice is that we stop being resentful and start being resourceful. If we are resourceful, then we'll find that no matter what dark situations we may be in, for Sita, ultimately her reunion with Ram was immensely joyful. Patabhisheka Lankrita Rama. Then eventually the Patabhishek was performed. Both of them were coronated. So they were reunited and they were coronated in a magnificent celebration. So that reunion, that re-entry of Lord Ram into Ayodhya is celebrated in Diwali. And it is not just the victory of Lord Ram's heroism over Ravana. It is definitely that which led to their victorious return. But it is also Sita's quieter heroism. Her quieter heroism was, she didn't fight any wars, but her quieter heroism, not a you could say explicit or overt heroism, it's a quieter, less explicit kind of heroism. Was her quieter heroism was that she didn't let herself ever become resentful. She stayed resourceful, and that is how she survived till Lord Ram came, and then she is reunited with him. So that is the power of being resourceful. And when we light those lamps, which are dissipate the darkness at night, when you do that in Diwali, we can pray that in our hearts, whatever darkness might be there, whatever negativity might be there, that also be dissipated. That where there is resentment, instead of being resentful, let there be some small lamp of being resourceful. The lamps don't dissipate the entire darkness of the night, but the lamps still create points of light which look beautiful in their own way, and they illuminate the path. They beautify and illuminate the path. So similarly for all of us, let's pray that on the occasion of Diwali, as we light the external lamps, may we also light the internal lamp, one small lamp of becoming resourceful, and thereby countering whatever resentfulness might be there in our hearts. So I'll summarize. Today we discuss 3 points. First is, when we try to understand the epics, we may see that the situations are so different. This story seems so fantastic. But the basic principle that choices have consequences, and therefore we all need to choose responsibly. That principle is universal. And we discuss the theme of stop being resentful, be resourceful. So Lord Ram's victorious return to Lanka is not just his victory, but also Sita's victory. And we discuss that being resentful, it's understandable, but it's undesirable. So when things go wrong, it may be because of nature's antipathy, because people's cruelty, because of our own fallibility or stupidity. But if we start beating ourselves up, we start becoming resentful. It's like when things go dark around us, we close our eyes. It makes things far worse. So when Sita was abducted, she could have blamed nature. Why are we in this forest? She could have blamed her protector. She could have blamed Ravan. She could have blamed Ram, Lakshman, Kaikai, or she could have blamed herself. But she didn't do that. She was resourceful in small ways. She told Jatayu, please give this message to Ram. And Jatayu survived to give that message. She gave some clues. She left some clues with the monkeys. And Lord Ram got those clues. And she prayed for Hanuman's protection from the fire. And not only was Hanuman protected, but he used that tail to burn Lanka, burning but not hurting tail. So Her resourcefulness led to resourcefulness on the side of others also. And then so it's undesirable because we start making things worse. Then being resourceful is not so difficult. Why? Because being resourceful simply means shifting our focus, not how bad things are, but what can I do about it? Not why this is happening, but how can I make things better? How can I serve the Lord? So we can begin with hope, we can begin with energy, or we can begin with activity. Anywhere where we can begin, we start beginning, and from there we move forward step by step. And I discussed about Prabhupada's example that so many things went wrong. He could have become resentful. Resentfulness is always justifiable, but it's not justified. It is not helpful. So how do we move from being resentful to being resourceful? So 3 things. Look at the past and be grateful. Find out something good that has been there in our past, some ray of light. Yeah, this is something I'm grateful for. So even if we can't be grateful in all situations, we can be grateful. Even if we can't be grateful for all situations, we can be grateful in all situations. I discussed that that woman whose child was lost, she started crying, not so much because of fear or horror, but out of gratefulness that the whole community to help me over here. So then we talk about, so be grateful for the past, be purposeful about the present. So 2 ways purposeful is, think of some, if you feel powerless and hopeless, think of something which we can do, some small thing, some positive thing, and do it. I talked about equine therapy or bovine therapy, which is being adapted in India. Just take care of something, put a smile on someone's face, speak some kind words, or think of some terrible thing which we could do and don't do it. We can always make things worse. We are never so powerless that we can't make things worse. And if we don't do that, that itself is a sign that we do have some power on that situation. And then be faithful about the future. So faith means openness to possibility. The ways in which the Lord may reciprocate are unpredictable. So Sita was purposeful in this. Sita was purposeful in the sense that she was looking for an opportunity. She was always remembering the Lord. Ravan was in a bigger prison because he was lustful and he was frustrated. So our external situations may be worse than others, but if we have learned to deal with resentment, we can be happier or at least better overall in the difficult situations than somebody who's in a more comfortable situation. And then lastly, so faithfulness means that even if something terrible has happened, everything that happens may not be good, but the Lord can bring good through everything that happens. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Wish you all a very happy Diwali. May the lamps of Diwali light the lamp of resourcefulness in all our hearts. Hare Krishna. Thank you for your various comments. I'm grateful to be of service. So I see quite some questions also over here. So should we, as far as the organizers, should I take the questions from the comments, or do we want to have questions being asked by the participants? How do you want to go ahead? Okay. So Teja Kondapalli was asking, is anything happening only due to karma phalam or anything else? It's complex. It could be because of past karma phala, but it's not just past karma phala, it's also present situations. When Srila Prabhupada was asked, if somebody gets infected by a disease, is it because of their past karma? Prabhupada says, no, it's because they were careless. So careless means if in the pandemic somebody gets COVID. So it's not necessarily because of past karma. It could be just because at some point they were careless. Now we may say it's not just being careless. It's when some problems come upon us, it's a complex combination of present karma and past karma. So 10 people may get infected by COVID. Maybe 5% recover very quickly just after a few days of discomfort. 2-3 people take much longer. For 1 or 2 people, it becomes almost fatal. So why that difference? That difference. So all of them were infected, were exposed to somebody who had COVID. So when problems come upon us, so why do we different people suffer to different degrees because of the same problem? That is where purva karma comes into the place. So maybe because of past karma, somebody had a more sickly body, more vulnerable body, or they were meant to go through greater suffering. So it's a complex combination. So when some problem comes upon us, we don't know which dimension or of that problem has come because of our present actions, and which has come because of our past actions. So what we can do is focus on our present actions. And sometimes if some present actions don't lead to solutions, then rather than losing hope, we understand, okay, this may be because of my past karma. Let me just endure this and it will go. So it will go in its own course. Tam sitiksha subharata. Thank you. So when we say that, yes, that these resources of principles of giving and hearing do not work, if we are resourceful and people used us and then they went by, well, it depends on what our conception of resourcefulness is. Resourcefulness is not naivety. I have a whole separate class on be good, but also be shrewd. Sita was good in wanting to serve the sage, but she also knew that I was alone in the forest. So I have to be shrewd. There are people out there in the world who will exploit us, and we have to be careful. So resourceful doesn't mean being naively helpful, being uncritically helpful. We have to use our intelligence, because intelligence is also one resource. So humility doesn't mean we let people walk over us. It just means that we don't want to lord over people. So we have to be reciprocal. If somebody find that some people are just using us and then not reciprocating, then we have to recognize that maybe I have to move toward healthier relationships where I won't be abused like that. Yes, Jai Yoshi Prabhu. I asked you to unmute. Okay. Okay. Abhinav.
Am I audible now?
Yeah.
Thank you, Prabhu, for the wonderful class. Prabhuji, in this whole process of being resourceful and not resentful, there is some part that there's some aspect that where we also have to recognize and feel the pain of what we have done wrong. Right? If I have to say, give a hypothetical example, someone is addicted to coffee and he is again and again falling to that. He's again and again consuming coffee in some or the other form. He can just not give up. So unless and until we don't feel the pain that what we are doing is wrong, that doesn't work. How to balance this? Because as soon as we start, so in the process of doing that, somewhere I have to tell myself that this is wrong. Somewhere I have to fight with myself and
Okay.
so but then the resourcefulness aspect doesn't come.
Yeah, I got your point, Jai Prabhu. So I'd say definitely when I said resourceful, it also means that we have to be resourceful enough to deal with the problems that have been caused by our actions. So what does it mean? Being resourceful also means recognizing our capacity. So suppose, say somebody is trying to give up some habit and they're not able to give it up. Well, it could simply mean that conditioning right now is so strong that maybe it's not possible to give it up immediately. So we have to diversify. See, a war has to be fought realistically. So if somebody is trying to attack a fort, and that fort is built in such a way that you just hit the fort and all that happens is your weapons get destroyed and you get injured, then maybe stop attacking the fort. Find some other way to deal with it. So sometimes we have to be patient with ourselves and recognize that some habits may take more time for us to become free from than other habits. Somebody else may not have that habit deep rooted enough, so they may be able to give it up easy. We don't have to compare with others in this regard. So let's see what other areas we can work on. So if we continue our spiritual practices, we continue to strengthen ourselves, maybe it is that, okay, this particular habit can't be overcome right now. Be patient, be kind with yourself, and look at some other areas in which we can improve ourselves. No, so, and as we start strengthening ourselves, purifying ourselves, gaining confidence by working in areas that we can work in, then gradually what will happen by that is we will get the strength and we'll work on particular habits. So sometimes if we define our self transformation or self worth by just trying to give up one particular habit, that itself can be very reductionistic and unhealthy. So take responsibility, but also acknowledge reality. And if in a particular habit we are again struggling and flailing and falling, then maybe those particular impressions are too deep rooted for us to overcome right now. So be patient, work in some other areas. Okay. Thank you.
And Prabhuji, I also have one question and comment.
Let's come back to you if you don't mind.
Okay.
Yes. Abhinav Prabhu, I've asked you to unmute.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. I really liked your class today. It was really nice. Prabhu, my question for you is, are loving relationships a fundamental right for all living entities, or is it a privilege that is bestowed upon us by our karma?
Okay, that's a good question. So are loving relationships a right, or are they based on karma? Well, my understanding would be that not every loving relationship may be a right for everyone in all situations. Love is an innate nature. So for example, say somebody is born in a family where maybe the parents are always bickering, maybe so that could be karma. So that somebody may get into a marital relationship where they find that there's a lot of incompatibility and a lot of distress. Wherever two people are there, there's going to be some distress, but it depends on the magnitude. So for us, one of the problems is that we sometimes over expect from particular relationships. See, one of the reasons now, again, say marital discord and divorce and things like that, one of the reasons why that is more prevalent, it is a complex phenomena, but one is that because we over expect. If you consider before the 19th century, romantic novels or romantic movies were not there at all. So we have an inflated expectation of what we should expect from one particular relationship. And on top of that, we live in nuclear families, most of us. So in the past, people used to belong to a community, not just an extended family, but a community. So the relational needs were taken care of by multiple people. And not only that, people used to have relatively stable professions. So even in the workplace, people would form relationships. Now we often, because of upward mobility, people change their jobs very quickly. And then they're not really living in a community of like-minded people. They're not living in a family. So what happens is we over-expect from a particular relationship. And then that becomes a problem. So we could say, broadly speaking, yes, it is our nature to love and be loved. And in my understanding, the Lord will never put us in a situation where we will never get any love at all. But it is possible that we may not get love in particular relationships. So I may find that, okay, I want my father's appreciation, but my father never speaks one kind word to me. But maybe I have an uncle who speaks something, but maybe I have a godfather who's kind to me. So I write on the Gita every day. So I write at gitadaily.com. So one article I wrote is that don't overvalue those who devalue you, and learn to value those who value you. So this principle is important. Don't overvalue those who devalue you. Some people, no matter what we do, no matter what we do, it's never going to be enough for them. So then don't overvalue them. Just focus on others with whom we can have relationships. So yes, by our karma, particular relationships may not be available for all of us, but still, that doesn't mean no relationship will be available for us. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Yes. So there's okay. Thank you, Vallavi Mataji, for sharing that link. I was also searching for the same thing. Yes. Amrita Sundari Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much, Prabhuji. I had a question. As we practice devotional life, we understand that the situation is arranged by Krishna. We're not to blame people, but then the emotions or the past impressions are so strong that it takes time to react properly, and we see that advanced devotees react or respond very fast, instantly. They are not deviated from the path of righteousness, or acting from the spiritual platform. So how do I know? By practicing devotional service, eventually it will come. But my question is, I might be practicing devotional service, but maybe I'm not practicing it in the right way to gain the spiritual strength to overcome, the circumstances, and always react from the platform of, serving Krishna or his parts and parcels.
Okay. So it's a matter of habit and training. It's like a firefighter. When a person wants to be a firefighter, initially when they go on the site of a fire, they go, this is so huge, and they become completely overwhelmed by panic. Now, when a seasoned firefighter sees the fire, that person may also, oh, this is such a dangerous fire. But their training, their fire training kicks in. And those instincts of training, they enable them. Okay, let's attack the fire from here. You go here, I'll do this. So what happens for us is, when difficulties come, it's natural that there'll be some amount of shaking, some amount of becoming shaken. But over a period of time, we could say our reorientation towards a healthy response will be faster. So that's just a matter of training. That's just a matter of advancement. So what can we do to make that reorientation faster? Well, 2-3 things. First is that when we have the opportunity to connect with Krishna, to do the right thing, to focus on being constructive, we do that wholeheartedly. That itself is a habit, that itself creates a momentum. And then second is, if there are some typical situations where we tend to overreact or go off track, then try to anticipate and plan for that. Maybe when I get angry with someone, or I tend to get angry and yell at particular people in particular situations, try to look at the situations and maybe try to anticipate and see how I could prevent getting into those situations, or walk away from the situation before I explode, or maybe keep a set of scriptural verses or scriptural quotes, scripture-based quotes about anger and how to deal with anger, and read them at that time. So that way we try to diffuse the situation before it becomes explosive. And lastly, it's very helpful to have some close friends who can, even one close friend as a accountability partner, or as a person with whom we can share our heart. So generally, if novice firefighter becomes freezes, maybe some seasoned firefighter, or maybe that's a colleague comes and, hey, come on, we can go this way and do this. Oh, okay, sure, I can do it. So having some association, it need not be very senior association, it can be even a friend with whom we can share our heart, they can give us feedback, that helps. So that way we can come slowly towards the healthier response, but don't be too harsh with oneself if it takes time, because we are all growing gradually. It will take time in its own case. Okay.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Yes, Krishna Rupa Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Dhanavad Pranam Prabhuji. Thank you so much for this wonderful class before Diwali, and setting the mood for tomorrow, that in what mood we should be actually, looking at this day. I really like the parallel between Srimati Sita Maharani and Srila Prabhupada. That was a very, very striking point in the class. In fact, I'm in Mayapur, and I was just today, while chanting, I was thinking that, what is the main significance? How can I actually compare and contrast the life of Srila Prabhupada with, Lord Ram? And I think it just came from you. So they say that this Dham is Chintamani Dham, whatever you desire will just come out true. So I'm very thankful to you, Prabhuji, for this particular class. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So you had a question, or that was a comment? Thank you for the comment.
Just reflection. Thank you so much. Yeah, it was just a reflection.
Wonderful. Happy to be of service. Thank you, Mataji, sharing that. So Kanchanabji Prabhu. We'll come to Dr. Nitin Sharma after that.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the lovely session. Prabhuji, I was just thinking about your point regarding Ravana and Sita, how Ravan was basically, in fact, the one who was imprisoned, even though he was in his palace, and Sita wasn't imprisoned, even though she was captured, because she could remember Ram. And by that remembrance of Ram, she got inner satisfaction. So I was just thinking that when I'm feeling imprisoned or a striking situation, remembering Krishna becomes virtually impossible or difficult or tricky. It can be like a slight thought. And even if I did think of Krishna or remember Krishna, it doesn't give that inner satisfaction. So what can one do to, if they're not on the level of finding the inner satisfaction from remembrance?
Well, yeah, I would say that there are two aspects. There's devotion and there is service. Sometimes remembering Krishna is quite difficult, but getting into doing something tangible is helpful. And that's why we are creatures of habits. So if we have created healthy habits for ourselves. So for example, whenever I'm in fear, if my habit is maybe I can recite some verses or just read some favorite passages from scripture, then or maybe recite some songs or sing some kirtan. So we are not defined so much by what we know as by what we love. We often think of ourselves as almost like creatures who are carriers of right information. Well, that is one aspect to us, but we are essentially conscious beings who are meant to love. So now love for Krishna may seem to be a very big thing, but we could say when we develop a habit, that habit is almost like a love that has, it is not a very explicit love, but it's almost like a love that is permeated into subconscious being. I just habitually do it. There may not be any expressions of ecstasy when I do it. I just do it. So I would say that in our safe situations, in our normal situations, if we try to cultivate some good habits, as we find out something which is good for us and something which is also something we like to do, and then we start doing that more and more, then what will happen is we'll be able to do it at that time. So yeah, remembering Krishna at that time is very difficult, but doing some specific activities connected with Krishna, specific activities that help us raise our consciousness, that is relatively easier.
Okay, so it's like preparing for an exam. When things are safe, we cultivate the good habits, and then when the exam comes, when that tough time comes, then we'll be able to revert back to these good habits that
I say it's like, because it's like, okay, I will make it a little more specific. It's not just preparing for an exam, it's like preparing for a war by training in a particular weapon. It's important, in a particular weapon. It's like, okay, when the war comes, I have to fight, but I may have 100 weapons, I'm not good at any of them. And what do I do at that time? So take one weapon and train ourselves in that, then we can use that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Happy to have service. So Dr. Nitin Sharma, I saw your question that if sometimes we just feel completely confused and powerless because of that. Was that the question? We are not sure what to do. We may feel I want to be purposeful, but we are not clear what to do in an unavoidable situation in life. What is Krishna's purpose for us? Is that right, Nitin Prabhu?
No, Prabhuji, my question is that you have told that Krishna has a purpose behind everything, and especially in the bad phase of our life.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. Yeah, so I saw that question.
But these statements are actually seems like more poetic, and generally they seems to give told to give the solace to a person, and generally it may be that life is unfair for that person for that particular part. So how to understand this?
I'm not saying that life is not unfair. And is it poetic? Yeah, it is poetic. But does it mean that just because it is poetic doesn't mean it's not true? See, from this life's perspective, life is unfair for everyone. From this life's perspective, for some people it may be extremely unfair. For some people it may be a little less unfair. But it's unfair for everyone. Because we all feel at some time or the other underappreciated, undervalued. That's something which always happens. So my point is that sometimes the purpose doesn't necessarily come as one clear, this is the path I'm going to take. Even for Srila Prabhupada, was he always sure? okay, this is how I'm going to spread Krishna consciousness or I'm going to spread bhakti. No. Prabhupada says, Ache kichu karje tabe ei anumane. Krishna, you have brought me here to America. You must have some purpose for me. Anuman, I'm guessing that. So it's not that the purpose has to become illuminated in one sudden moment of light. It's more like when it's dark around me, let me take a flashlight and just take one step forward. And then the flashlight cannot show the whole path, but the flashlight can be still one step forward. And I take one step forward. And I take one step forward. And then eventually what happens is the street lights may come back. The sun may rise. So things will become clearer at that time. So when we think of a purpose, it doesn't have to be something which is completely clear in the long run. In fact, sometimes in crisis situations, trying to think long term is often counterproductive because there are so many variables at that time. If I got cancer or somebody I love has got cancer, well, that is not the time to start planning long term. That is because there's okay, what is going to happen? How fast is going to progress? How bad is it going to be? What kind of treatment is going to work? So at that time, better shrink your frame of reference. Let's take one day at a time. Let's take, okay, this is today, this is what you should do, this is what I should do, this is what I can do, and move forward. At the end of the day, maybe look back, plan for the next day. So basically, just look for planning for one day is like looking at the flashlight. The flashlight can show one step ahead, one step ahead, one step ahead. And eventually we'll find, okay, this path has come to a dead end, but this path is showing me the way. Let me move it like that. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. We'll take one last question here, and then we'll stop. Okay, we have two questions. Sita Thakurani Mataji asked the question that if a resourceful partner has a resentful partner in a close relationship, but in a senior position, what can they do at that time? It's tough, especially where it's the hierarchical situation, senior position, then it becomes tough. I would say two things. First is, even if it is a senior-junior relationship, we can try to do our part as well as possible. And slowly, other person will see, okay, the other person could have been so much more resentful. The other person could have been so much troublesome, but the other person was not. In the Bhagavatam, there's the story of Devahuti serving Kardam Muni. Devahuti was a princess, and suddenly she was in the forest doing austerities. And she kept serving, and she had no idea whether her husband will also look at her and appreciate her or not. But then he realized, oh, she has become so emaciated. I need to reward her for service. And then he created a big palace for her. And then they had children. And then she had some happiness over there. So things may change. So on one side, we keep doing our part. That's one side. Now, of course, I'm not saying Kardam Muni was resentful. I'm just giving Devahuti's example as being resourceful even when there was no reciprocation, at least at the immediate level. The second point would be that sometimes we have to work laterally. That means that person may not listen to me, but maybe they have some equals, they have some friends. We can gently talk with them and explain the situation. Maybe let them talk with that partner. So that's the advantage of if we are a part of a community. There are multiple channels of communication. Of course, you have to be careful that this doesn't feed into gossip and spread into negativity around the person. If they start feeling that we are backbiting, that will be problematic. So that's why we have to choose a trustworthy person. But lateral modes of communication also work. We can talk with their seniors, and if somebody is ready to help them that way. And beyond that, sometimes it's just that in some relationships, we just have to lower the expectations. Just have to lower the expectations of some people. If some people are resentful, you see, different relationships work well at different degrees of intimacy. Sometimes it's just some people are just the way they are. And if they're not going to change, then what can we do? Well, just wait. And seek within the boundaries of dharma, seek some meaningful relationships in other directions. And if we lower the expectations of the relationship, it's not easy, But if you lower the expectation, then relatively speaking, we can have a reasonable functional relationship. It may never be a close relationship, but it may not be close in the sense of emotionally close relationship. But sometimes things are like that. Even a spiritual community, that's why we have Shiksha, we have Diksha Guru, and we have many Shiksha Gurus. Sometimes our immediate Shiksha Guru might not be the person whom we are very close to, but somebody else we might be close to. So we can connect with them better. So that's okay. So try to be, so resourcefulness can work in all these ways. Okay. So thank you very much for your participation, your thoughtful questions. Wish you all a very happy Diwali, happy Govardhan Puja in the future, and thank you. Shri Ramachandra Bhagavan ki jai. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Jai Gaur Premanande. Very, very cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for extending and for all the participants. So, Prabhuji has this book on Ramayana, on life and relationships. The link is given in the chat. And there is an upcoming residential program at Govardhan Eco Village from November 15th to 19th. And the details will be shared in the WhatsApp group. So please plan your schedules accordingly. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. Thanks for the announcement.